All right. Hi. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back to the PagerDuty Twitch channel. Today, it's Process Automation Release Day. And this is a big one. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. Forrest is here with his party hat on. And we've got Jake and Pecos with us for the first time. So let's get
I
rolling.
do.
Let's get right
I
into
do
it.
have
What's
my
new?
party
What's
hat
going
on
on?
because we had a big release. We
Yeah.
had a release, and then we have a big announcement about that release, which is why Pecco's here today. So
Yay.
I wore my party hat. Jake took the more casual full zip up instead of quarter zip up today, and we're working on Pecco's signature article of clothing. Maybe it's gonna be the hoodie from now on. You have to wear a hoodie when you come on the stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge in Austin nowadays. It's literally every 2 days it goes from 50 to like 90 degrees. So
Okay.
either you're going to see me in
Well,
a Hamlet or like a zip up.
summertime, you're gonna sweat it out.
Yeah.
So let me. I'll share. I think there's going to be a lot of sharing of screens today, but I'll share first, and we'll just talk about some of the release notes and preview. Everyone can see that. I think I can see that. Everyone can see that on my screen here.
Yep. Right.
But 4.11 released a couple weeks ago, so if you're already up and running on this, that's great. Some of the biggest highlight, and the reason that Pecco is here is we have a whole new architecture around our runners, and he's gonna go through that towards the end. But we also included some new plugin suites for both ServiceNow and JIRA plugins, which Jake I think is gonna talk through a little bit more, and I always like to pick out a few other little additional updates. There was an Apache CVE related to the Commons file upload. In case your security scanners might have been catching it. We did get that fixed in this version. So always want to keep up to date related to that. That's both open source and in the enterprise version, it seems. And yeah, that's it. Oh, if you're setting single sign-on settings in our enterprise product, that can now hot reload. You don't have to restart Rundeck
Nice.
for that. Quick shout out to David Darby. He actually provided some enhancements also to our ServiceNow plugins, where you can add notes to incidents, etc. As well as some of our other support and other staff members here helping with docs and other things. So, with that, I think I'm turning it over to Jake to talk about some of the plugin groups that we added in this latest release.
Yeah. Show us all about it.
Yeah, let's dig in. Entire screen. All right.
There we go.
All right, so we're back in process automation, and the updates that we talk about here are relevant to Runbook automation as well. So regardless of whether or not using the on-prem or the SaaS product. So as a reminder for those that maybe didn't attend our last release, Notes Twitch stream, or haven't been up to speed, we've been enhancing what we've been calling our plugin suites configuration. And what that is how you configure the credentials and configuration parameters for a suite of plugins. So those of you familiar with the platform, we've got PagerDuty plugin suite, for example, includes job step plugins for the workflows, notification plugins, webhook plugins, so on and so forth. And previously, if you wanted to configure these plugins, you would have to configure them potentially in numerous places. If you wanted to configure the job step plugins, you'd configure them there. If you wanted to configure the notification plugins, you configure it there, so on and so forth. And what we want to do is obviously streamline that process. But in addition to that, previously, if you wanted to configure your plugins at a job level, at a project level rather, you would be configuring them in this configuration file. So if I click configuration file here and log in again, you'll see that I've got a number of these configuration properties. And so configuring plugin properties here is not only tedious, but it leaves room for user error. And you have to know the syntax of that property quite well. So what we've done is added a graphical interface for configuring these plugins now. And so you can see I can now configure my JIRA and ServiceNow plugins in the same way that I've configured my PagerDuty plugin suite. And so here I have the fields that can then be leveraged by all of the different plugin types within this project. So my JIRA job steps and notification plugin, and if I had maybe a resource model plugin, could all leverage these properties. I'm demonstrating these here at the project level, but we've added the same type of user interface at the system level, at the also known as the framework level, making it so that if you use the same, say, JIRA credentials across your entire process automation instance across all projects, you now be able to set those there. And I can quickly show what that looks like. So if I'm in my system configuration and I go to JIRA, I now see that same user interface, and I can put in my plugin configuration parameters here. And so that's the enhancement. The enhancement specifically for 4.11 is for the JIRA suite and the ServiceNow suite. Look for in our upcoming releases covering a whole slew of other plugin suites having this new user interface, such as our Azure and Datadog and GCP plugin suites.
Excellent. That sounds fantastic. Sweet. All right. What's next? What else do we got today?
And then, up next, I think we have Pekko showing us and talking a little bit about this new runner announcement.
Super exciting.
Awesome. All right. So, so thanks for having me. First time sharing product updates on the Twitch stream for me. Again, Pekko Kranoff, product management with the automation group. So we're super excited. This is a big release for us. We've been working on that for some time. Essentially, with this next generation architecture that we're introducing with version 4.11, it really opens up the types of scenarios we can automate and environments that we can reach and access with the runners. So let me share my screen so you can follow some of the docs here. There we are. All right. So again, the first thing to draw your attention to, again, the runners have been updated now. They contain a lot of plugins from the workflow engine, including things like Ansible, HTTP, different node executors. We actually have a full list of these new runners or new plugins that are available in the documentation. So we've updated the documentation significantly to include things on how to set up the new architecture, configure it, how to install the runners. And again, one of the big highlights is that now the runners contain a lot of job, node, and workflow steps that previously were not available. So that means that from an architectural standpoint, we can deploy the runners almost like satellites for Runbook, and they can really run a lot of the local automation or automation integration inside that private network, inside the environment. To go back to the architecture real quick. So again, I have this chart to show you the before and after, so to speak, or the classic process automation architecture, where we have a central cluster or an instance of process automation, and then we remotely connect through different protocols to run things. With the next gen, again, the communication is handled by the runner through secure web. It's outbound. Again, no need really to open firewall holes on the perimeter, and as a result, we can attain like a more, say, it's more amenable to kind of the zero trust standards and architecture that may be required for some environments. So again, major new innovation, and it does actually change some of how we think about running jobs. So here in a little bit, I'll walk you through some scenarios, but to give you a quick glimpse of the release, again, runners, plugins are now available. We've changed how the workflows work and how we can dispatch and orchestrate across environments with this new architecture. So I'll show you that in an example in a second. And yeah, we've added a few more items to our documentation in terms of how the runner behaves in different conditions. There are a few other installation options that we just recently added. So we have a recipe to set up the runner running as a service. We've now also released a container image for the runners, so it's easier for deploying that through your container infrastructure. Whether you can deploy it in a Kubernetes environment, you can deploy the runner just as a Docker container. So again, all this is now available. Do we have any questions, any comments yet, or do you want to keep going?
No, not yet. Go ahead and we'll keep rolling.
Maybe for those who haven't been up to speed on the runner as a whole, maybe just give it an example or two, high level of when might you want to use a runner, and what kind of use cases would it really lend itself to?
Yeah, great question. So let's use an example. Like we'll draw from some of our early adopter customers. So let's say that you've deployed process automation or using Runbook automation, and you had some environments that were on-premise or some environments that were not accessible kind of directly on the internet, through SSH. So in that case, again, we can't establish direct SSH communication to run commands to dispatch to nodes. So the runners would get deployed in those environments. For example, if you had, if you're managing multiple, let's say, multiple applications that were isolated, or multiple individual tenants or application environments that were isolated from each other. So deploying the runner, multiple runners in each environment, then allows us to manage kind of that communication without having to open up, firewall holes at that perimeter of that private network. And in terms of applications, it's interesting. We just released this new technology, and we're seeing more and more customers like finding more, different use cases on how this gets deployed. Again, could be multi-cloud, it could be hybrid, where some things are on-premise data center. It could be like geographically, distributed environments. Let's say you had a data center in each state that you needed to connect to and manage. Another very interesting use case recently was around place of business. It could be your remote branches and offices. It could be retail. But again, these are environments that are not or increasingly they're not directly connected to your data center. So you still need to get access to manage devices and infrastructure there. The scenarios continue to grow. And Jake, I'll draw attention to one more thing here, which is, why did we choose the plugins that we chose? We feel like there's a lot of these bits and pieces of automation that gets deployed in environments. Like you may have some Ansible running in those environments. You may have, you may need to manage Kubernetes clusters. So the plugins that we chose were specifically around making it easier to reach that remote island of automation and then orchestrate it centrally from Runbook. Again, whether that's process automation on premise, the software, or the cloud version with Runbook automation.
Right. So those use cases, you outlined a few kind of different reasons that you would have isolated zones, whether it's storefronts or multiple geos or multiple tenants, if you're maybe a managed service provider. Just reasons that you would have to execute maybe the same type of automation, but in multiple places, whether it's all at the same time or at different times.
Yeah, and I think for folks that really want to expand the types of things they automate, right? So we've had customers that have started closing the automation loop, which is, I want a fully automated remediation cycle where, in these environments, again, I can, run a restart script or
rollback or failover.
So the use cases that you normally implement around patching, config management, remediation, diagnostics, they all apply. But I think really the major, at least from my perspective, the major first, the first major innovation that this is bringing is access, right? Access to now more and more environments. The second one is that once you get that access across a variety of environments, now you can actually orchestrate across these environments. So you don't have to log into each and run automation, but you can say, hey, I want to run an update across all my tenants,
Right.
So that multi-environment orchestration is now becoming much more approachable, easier with this new architecture.
Right. So like with that example, previously I would have to log into each tenant and run that update script or that update Ansible playbook. Now I can centrally manage that distributed execution in those remote environments.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah. And like I said, I'd love to hear, what other scenarios folks are thinking about, and I would say we're just at the start of this. We're looking to do more and more with this technology as we progress through the year. So definitely, feedback and ideas are welcome.
Awesome. We have one question from the audience, Pekko. They'd like to know how the runner is different from, say, an agent that might be
good
running.
Question. We are starting to get that question more frequently.
Yeah.
So think of this, think of the runner architecture as kind of this mini automation load balancer. Basically, it's the satellite that gets deployed on a private network, and it can still reach out nodes, within the perimeter of the network, with the different protocols. So there is definitely a use case for an agent where you deploy one piece of software in each, for each resource that you manage. But it's a little bit of a trade-off, right? It's like now I have to manage 1,000 pieces of software and update them versus now I have maybe 2 or 3 of the runners that are deployed as a load balanced, pair. And they can still handle all the remoting and access, but with a smaller surface area. Now, in some cases where individual servers are completely isolated from each other, an agent is perfectly fine for that. But we want to still allow you to run automation efficiently. Down the road, would we offer even a smaller version of the runner as an agent? That could be the case. But again, we have a lot of we have a lot of innovation to introduce just through the current architecture. So,
right. So one thing to note, right, about the runner is that if you have a job definition that in the definition says do this thing across the set of nodes, and you dispatch it to a runner, the runner now has that knowledge. Okay, I need to reach out to these nodes around me in this environment and perform that action, whereas an agent is a one-to-one.
Yeah, and the agent is invisible usually. So one advantage of having a known entity is that we can actually say, I want to run certain tasks on this specific, runner. It could be, for example, something that's more centralized. You want it to open and do an HTTP check, behind the firewall with that runner. And I have an example like that in my quick demo. Let's see. So we talked about installation again. There's different ways that you can deploy it. It is currently available for both Runbook and process automation. The runner feature set is a commercial feature set, so it's only available for the. It is not available for the OSS edition at the moment.
Okay. Are there plans for that in the future that we can tease people with, or maybe not? No.
Not at the moment, but
Okay.
again, normally our approach is as we continue advancing the technology, we also want to contribute back. So no specific plans, but again, as we evolve, I think there'll be opportunities.
Cool. We have one more question before you move on. You had mentioned like not needing a load balancer with this. Is it doing like, there's a question in the chat. How is it like a load balancer? Do you need a load balancer? Is it like not how does it like, is it pushing jobs to different things based on load, or is it just not part of what's going on yet?
It is a good question. You may still, so again, we've separated, actually it's a great question. We've separated two concerns: the execution from the central APIs, UI access, workflow management. So if you look at, if you squint a little bit, you can probably look at this chart. The first bar where all the central concerns are listed. This is the process automation server, and then where things execute are in the individual environment. So in a way, we've split the two workloads. If you have users logging in, API access, you still want probably that to be load balanced, because again, just for the sake of scaling access and to the UI, right, to the UI and APIs. Now the runners do give you another scaling factor for execution, because now we've moved that concern into the environment. So to answer the question shortly, I think you still want load balancing for the process automation centralized server.
Okay.
But we've offloaded the execution to runners.
Great.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great questions.
And we there's some good documentation around how to use multiple runners to load balance that execution engine in your environment. So definitely reference the docs that we've linked in today's session for digging deeper into that topic.
Right on. So if you're ready, I can give you a quick tour through.
Let's see it. Let's do it. Yeah.
How this works. If the like we say, if the demo guys are with me today, so we'll see. All right. So I've logged into one of my process automation instances here. This happens to be running in cloud, but again, whether you have the software running or on a cloud account, the behavior is the same. So step one is, how do I turn this on? Again, here you'll see that if you have the commercial version, you'll see runner management here. But this is turned on and off with a config setting. So the config setting is called distributed automation. Again, you don't have to squint too much. All this is documented step by step. But yeah, this toggle you can turn on the new architecture on and off. So now I'll go to one of my projects here, and I'll show you a couple of jobs and how they're configured. Actually, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Let me show you what the runners look like. So one new thing that is a new behavior for the runners is that in addition to them being packaged with plugins, common plugins, now we can also tag the runners. And tags are important because, think of a tag as the virtual IP address, of how we're going to route automation. So, you can create multiple tags, and again, multiple runners can have the same tag, and they become part of the same runner set when they have the same tags. So in terms of installation, I think we're gonna have another session where we can do a little bit more blow by blow. But again, here I have a demo and a test, tags that I've created. And now let's look at the jobs that I have. So I'm gonna show you 3 jobs. One is a job that's configured to, run centrally, a job that's configured to run on the runner, and then a job that is actually doing dispatching through the runner. So I'll start with the first most common case, which is central. Run this. It's just doing a HTTP check against pagerduty.com. So this will run. Notice here now that we have an extra identifier, which is telling us where things are running. One feedback we got previously was, hey, things are magically happening, but I have no clue what's going where. So now the runner behavior selection is very explicit. So you're not going to get lost into what's executing where. So again, this ran. Again, it did a HTTP check. Again, retrieved. It's using the HTTP plugin in this case. So let's look at how it's configured. All right. So now, in previous versions, you had a nodes section. Now it's called nodes and runners. So again, very simple workflow step, which is doing a HTTP check. And now we have this dropdown here that allows us to pick where we want things to run. Again, in this job, I'm picking the local runner, which is essentially the same thing as the server instance. And I'm choosing the behavior, which is I want this, task to run on the runner. Okay. Now we can look at some of the other jobs. Okay, now I'm going to look at a job that's actually running a remote plugin on the remote runner. So again, I'll run this. Again, it will be the same behavior, just do a HTTP check. Okay. Notice that now it's not using the local runner because I haven't configured it that way. It's going to dispatch remotely. And if I take a look at its configuration, again, I'm not going to click on the workflow. It's using the same HTTP plugin. But now notice that here I've selected that one of my remote runners that's tagged by demo, and it happens to pick this specific runner, is going to run the task on the runner itself. So again, this didn't execute on the central server. This executed on a remote location where I've installed the runner. And the last thing I was going to show you is the settings of how we do dispatching. Still is the same behavior, but now we can select which runner we're dispatching through. So again, if I want to manage a fleet of nodes in that private network, I'm going to use this dispatch nodes.
So are the runners aware of which nodes they have access to, or is that configured somewhere?
So good question. So at the moment they're not node aware.
Okay.
But you can, the best way to coordinate runners with nodes is using tags.
Okay.
And you can dynamically, I'm not going to show this here, but you can dynamically pass through job options, the runner set that you want to select based on a tag. So you can think of it this way: if I'm dynamically changing jobs, and I'll just have an option to say, okay, pass this in this environment. That's a job option tag for the runners. There's a job, it's a job option tag for the nodes, and they get paired up that way.
Cool.
Okay, so the last job here is the dispatching to nodes. Again, same UI behavior here. You can pick the nodes. I'll run this, and this will go and connect to one of the runners that I selected, and then it will connect and run a command on the remote node in that environment. And this is taking a little bit extra time because it's connecting, and then it's going to SSH and then send the output back to the to process automation. All right.
Still fairly quick though.
It is, yeah.
Relatively speaking.
Again, the idea here is imagine if you had multiple environments, and just with a few clicks now I can access and run things, versus like having to log into individual instances and where are things and which nodes do I need to target. Now it's like it's much simpler.
Is there a limit to how many runners you can have?
Trick question.
Ooh.
So yeah, as a scale always depends on what you're doing, and what kind of jobs you're running, what's the output that's being sent, how many nodes you have behind. But we have done some performance and scalability studies, and we have done some improvements already, and we're adding more. So I think in terms of scale, I have to publish the docs on that. I'm not gonna shoot off the cuff, but the idea is we should be able to deploy and run in many environments in parallel, not just one or two runners that are the central point of failure, so to speak.
Cool.
One thing I didn't mention is it's important actually why we're talking about this in terms of we've actually solidified the high availability scenarios here. Previously, runners it was not deterministic what's going to happen in case of one runner fails. In this case, runners that are part of the same runner set with the tags, if one of them fails, the other ones are available to pick up the job. And there's some simple load balancing behavior based on availability, how much work they have queued up. So there's active and failover load balancing happening on the jobs.
Okay. Is there like a job dispatcher or job queue in the back end? So like you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
That sounds great.
So I think that this covers the basics. Again, if I go back to I guess, do we have more questions we want to address while I'm here in the UI? Or?
Yeah, so there's one question. How do the runners work if I disallow SSH through the firewall? Are there limitations regarding that?
Yeah, so if you block SSH at the firewall, the runners can continue operating because they're connecting outbound from your private network into the central server. So again, the central server is not communicating to the runners over SSH. The runners are connecting back to central to retrieve the task list, and then within the private network, then they'll SSH into nodes or HTTP to nodes or whatever that job step is.
Are the runners reaching out on a weird port that folks might need to have?
No, it's
Okay.
it's configurable, and it's HTTPS.
Okay.
It's using HTTPS TLS.
So no special permissions from the enterprise firewall. Everything should be good.
Yeah, actually, one thing that we've encountered in a couple scenarios, like there's some environments are even more locked down, and outbound access is managed through proxy.
Yeah.
But the runners do support proxy configuration as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so before, I just want to highlight kind of what Pekko showed, right? I mean, if you think about what he showed in a example scenario use case sense, you might have a scenario with an incident occurs, and thinking about this from the auto diagnostics lens, you want to perform a health check against a public endpoint. That first job that he showed where that HTTP request is coming from the central server, that might be process automation on-prem, that might be Runbook automation. That HTTP request to a public endpoint doesn't need to originate from inside your network. So it can originate from the hosted, Runbook automation. But then that next health check might be to an internal API endpoint. And that's where running that check from the runner inside your network makes a lot of sense. And then that third job where you're dispatching a command to a node might mean that you're actually checking the status of that service on that remote server, on that, on the Kubernetes cluster, where you actually need something to execute on, from the perspective of a user on that remote node. So really powerful, right? Even just for the auto diagnostics use case, being able to be very versatile with what needs to be run where. But then as we mentioned earlier, the use cases span far and wide for things like deployments and patching and updates and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm doing a quick glimpse of. I didn't show you that in the UI, but again, the list of very commonly used cloud plugins from node executor standpoint. Again, having access to SSHJ, also open SSH. So again, we've expanded this list, and we'll continue doing that. Actually, this idea of delegating execution and access into the environment, we'll continue building on that. So stay tuned for more fun updates on this topic.
Awesome. Yeah.
I love this last question that just popped up.
Yeah. So the user wants to know, can I finally use Ansible with Rundeck Cloud?
Yes.
Woohoo! Awesome.
It's more like, yeah.
That's why we got the party
Not-
hat going
not
on
like
here.
this.
Yeah.
That is the biggest reason why I wore the party hat today.
Yeah. That's one of the primary use cases around this new architecture, by the way, is for people that have, they have Ansible or they have other automation in their secure environments, but they want to use a centralized hosted service like Runbook Cloud, now known as Runbook Automation.
Perfect. That'll be sweet. We'll have to have future discussions on how all that fits together as well. That'll be awesome. So cool. This sounds great. So what are next steps for folks? What do they do if they want to get a view of this? What's coming up? What can we tell them to do next?
Good question. So, I mean, obviously, if you're curious and you wanted to use the runners, sign up for a trial. We welcome that. We have a webinar coming up, which the webinar we'll actually do a little bit deeper dive into a few scenarios that we encountered, just to give you an idea about use cases. And then I think on Friday we will have a happy hour, which we'll do a little bit more discussion or deep dive on some of these topics that may come up.
Awesome.
Maybe have more scenarios I can walk you through. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Sweet. Do you have anything else you want to hit people with? Oh, I gotta get the bit.ly link here. I'll put it in the chat so the folks can sign up. The webinar is on Thursday, so we'll see folks there. That will also be recorded and will be on demand afterwards. So if you miss it and you want to come back to it, that's always available. And then we will be back here on the channel on Friday for the How To Happy Hour. We'll be digging into some gory details and getting things going here with this new setup, so folks can see that. And that will be Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And bring your questions and whatever else.
And Mandy, what I would say is, for Friday, if you're curious about certain topics, definitely fire them up, and we'll make sure that we cover those on Friday.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not sure what you guys use as your contact method. You can email my team. We're community-team@pagerduty.com, or if you want to post something in the forums, we'll catch it there as well. Just so folks know, you can reach out to us anywhere, anytime, and we'll try and get all your questions answered. So cool. Anything else out there from the audience? Anybody else have any questions? Anything else you'd like to know before we get into all the good stuff? Then on Thursday and Friday, we'll try and answer today. If not, we'll cut today off and we'll get everybody running. We'll hope to see everybody Thursday and back here again on Friday for more great stuff from process automation and all this fantastic new architecture. So it'll be great. Thanks a lot for coming along today, guys.
Thanks, Mandy. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, take care. We'll wish you an uneventful day, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you never miss a stream. Follow us at PD Community and PagerDuty on twitch.tv. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you'd like to be on our stream, email us at community-team@pagerduty.com so we can feature the cool things you're doing. And don't forget, check out all of our global events on our calendar at pagerduty.com/events.